Let's rewind to the 1930s. Iraq, the land once known as Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, where humans first invented writing, the wheel, and organized cities. In 1936, workers were digging near the village of Khujut Rabu, just outside Baghdad. And there, in a layer of earth dating back roughly 2,000 years, they uncovered something odd. It was not a weapon. It was not jewelry. It was a small clay jar, barely 5 inches tall. 2 years later, in 1938, a German archaeologist named Wilhelm Konig examined the jar more closely at the National Museum of Iraq. And what he found inside changed everything. Inside the clay jar was a cylinder of sheet copper. Inside that copper cylinder sat an iron rod, held in place with an asphalt plug at the top. Konig looked at this arrangement and his mind jumped to something familiar. Because in modern science, this is almost exactly the structure of a simple electrochemical cell, a battery. 2 different metals, separated by a barrier, sealed inside a container. Add an acidic liquid like vinegar or wine, and you have all the ingredients needed to generate a small electric current. Konig published his theory in 1938, and the idea exploded into public imagination. Could ancient Mesopotamians, or perhaps the later Parthian or Sassanid peoples who lived in that region, have discovered electricity thousands of years before Alessandro Volta invented the modern battery in 1800? It sounds like something out of a science fiction novel, but is it actually true? Let's dig into the evidence. To understand whether this jar could really function as a battery, scientists decided to test it. Not the original artifact, since that would risk damaging it, but faithful replicas built to the exact same specifications. In the 1940s, a scientist named Willard built a replica and filled it with grape juice, which is naturally acidic. The result? It generated about half a volt of electricity. Half a volt is not much. It would not power a light bulb, it would barely register on your phone's charging cable. But it was electricity. Real, measurable electricity, produced by a design that was supposedly created 2,000 years ago. Other researchers replicated the experiment using vinegar and, in some tests, connecting several jars together in a series produced enough current to electroplate a small object with a thin layer of gold or silver. And that theory became incredibly popular. Some researchers proposed that ancient craftsmen used these devices for electroplating, applying a delicate layer of precious metal onto jewelry or statues without needing to melt down solid gold. It is a compelling idea. Ancient goldsmiths secretly using primitive batteries to create dazzling metalwork centuries before science understood what electricity even was. But here is where the story gets complicated, because most historians and archaeologists today are skeptical, deeply skeptical. First, there is no supporting evidence, no wires, no conductors, no ancient texts describing electroplating techniques, no collection of similar jars found in a workshop setting that would suggest an assembly line of ancient batteries. Just one jar, found alone. Second, the design does not match how ancient people actually used containers like this. Archaeologists who specialize in the region point out that the jar closely resembles containers used to store sacred scrolls. In fact, similar jars from the same era have been found still containing rolled papyrus. That asphalt seal, the one Konig assumed was there to hold the metal rod in place. It may have simply been there to protect a scroll from moisture, a common practice at the time. The iron rod would have served as a rigid center post for the scroll to be rolled around, and the copper cylinder as a protective sleeve. In other words, what looks like a battery might actually just be an ancient version of a document tube. Third, and this is important, there is zero evidence of any electrical devices from this era that such a battery could have powered. No wires, no lamps, no electrical tools. If ancient civilizations had electricity, what exactly were they using it for? Some fringe theories suggest ancient acupuncture needles or religious rituals involving a mild electric shock, but these ideas rest on speculation, not proof. So, where does that leave us? Most mainstream historians today lean toward the scroll storage theory. It fits with known archaeological patterns from the region far better than the battery theory does. And yet, the mystery has never been fully closed. Because here is the strange part. The design does work as a battery. That is not up for debate. It has been tested and proven repeatedly. The question is not whether it could generate electricity. It clearly can. The real question is whether the people who built it ever intended it to. And that is a question archaeology may never fully answer. So, did the ancients have electricity? Probably not in the way our imaginations want to believe. There is likely no secret history of Mesopotamian engineers wiring up ancient laboratories. But the Baghdad battery still tells us something remarkable. It reminds us how easily a simple object can spark massive scientific curiosity, and how the line between ancient technology and modern coincidence can sometimes blur in fascinating ways. Whether it was a forgotten source of primitive electricity or simply a clever container for protecting sacred scrolls, one thing is certain. The people who built this object were far more resourceful and inventive than we often give them credit for, and maybe that is the real lesson here. Ancient civilizations were not primitive. They were clever. They experimented. They engineered solutions to real problems using the materials available to them, thousands of years before modern science existed. So the next time someone tells you ancient humans were simple or unsophisticated, remember this little clay jar from Baghdad and the debate it sparked that still continues today. If you enjoyed exploring this mystery with me, make sure to subscribe, because ancient history is full of secrets, just like this one, waiting to be uncovered. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.